So over the last 2 years, I think AI models have like crossed into this very like strange sort of threshold, right? I think on benchmarks they reason and they can write and see and they can code and they can even plan. I think better than most humans even. But when you walk into like very large companies, right, you kind of realize that very little has actually changed. So the conversation, I think, isn't about like whether AI works, right? The conversation isn't about that anymore. It's very clear that it does work. I think the real question is, why hasn't that intelligence translated into genuinely real enterprise outcomes, right? And the models are so strong, but the results are so weak because we keep hearing that models are getting like exponentially better. But if that's true, why are so few AI systems actually running
Why there's
inside?
an MIT report.
Exactly, that says
Mm.
95% of AI systems fail,
Mhm.
fail, right? So talk a little bit about that.
So I think the first thing is like it's true that models have improved a lot. Uh, so, but one thing I also ask myself is model improvement is very different than uh, model deployments
Mm,
in the enterprise. So enterprise have a lot of context. How to bring that context into the models? That's not an easy thing. I mean, of course, so think about like so. I was thinking about our own organization, and we use this third-party system to do annual evaluations, right?
mm,
And
mm,
someone who built that system, which we are using, when they were built, of course, that was a SaaS era,
mm,
right? They may have thought of like they would build it once and then they would sell it to thousands of organizations and we're going to make a lot of money. And that's true. That's exactly what SaaS was. But then now that the way the templates that platform is giving you for the evaluation is bullshit, right?
mm,
And that's wrong. That's not
mm,
gonna. You don't want to plan your next year because what's that what based on what the template ask you to provide and your people to provide onto that uh, on that platform. So that's the systems are very deterministic. They were
mm,
designed in a in a very deterministic kind of world where they were like you knew what's the input, what's the output, and now you can. I mean, I can imagine I can do 100x better if I
mm,
have uh, more AI-based systems, right? But how can we adapt to that? One thing I've always is like, if you're expecting your existing teams to just run the same process into the new platform, that's not going to happen. They have
mm,
a different job to do, for example, in terms of evaluation. So HR have a lot of on their plate, and they
mm,
can't do this now. Uh, they can't now work with you to help you modernize that HR stack, that evaluation stack, or whatever. So I've been part of some enterprises, and I like that idea of like they build this change management team, very small team,
mm,
dominated by the operations people. Right,
mm,
the idea that the great ideas would come from the technologists. I mean, I haven't seen that great idea from the technologists. So bring operations people into that change management team, and then allow uh, the technologists to work with them to come up with a platform based on the vision that your leaders have, right,
mm,
for the business, and then build very personalized system, right? That is a way to go, rather than getting your head just stuck into the era of the SaaS, where
mm.
you think that you would ask someone and they would give you that platform, and then they would do some tweaks and it would work for you. So thinking about AI as a SaaS is wrong. So
Mm.
that's my opinion. So I've seen organizations, and I've been working with some of them, that if you deploy hyper personalized systems and primarily chose to work with the operations
Mm.
rather than with the technologists, the outcomes are there.
Mm.
Models are already there. Of course, execution is always harder. So I think that's what I've learned. Like I mean, one answer of this thing where I was saying is bring operations people, bring people who are in the trenches
Yeah, yeah.
closer to the AI, rather than bringing technologists building the system for the operations people. And now the cost of building software is has gone way down.
Yeah.
So what we really need to find out is what suits to the enterprise workflows,
Mm.
to your
Mm.
to your own um, business workflows, right?
Mm. Mm.
Just on that. So we were working with this very large hospital, and they were trying to implement this system, and there wasn't any adaptation. So at the end of the day, there were like lots of forms, and no one was using those. I mean, at the end of the day, so it was just like, so I mean, and the way they were using it, like for example, as an active system of record, but there wasn't any intelligence into it, and it was very hard for the people to adapt. All we did was, and it's easier. All we did was we just asked them how you work, how you organize your workflow, and build a conversational UI on top of it, voice and all that. The adoption is 100%. I mean, let me tell you, it's far harder to come to the office than coming to the office and not using a system that's especially being procured for you. Like, people want to use technology. It's not like that they don't. Somehow our biological neural weights are not wired to use 2000 or 200 screens that someone else has designed for you, with the notion that they would build it and then would sell it to thousands like you.
And I think at some level, I agree with that, but I think also at some level, like the failure in enterprises or large companies for that matter, I think it stops being technical at some point and then it starts becoming structural, right? So it's kind of like,
I think technical breakthroughs, it was never technical. I don't think. I mean, what technical? No, it was always structural. It was always somehow. I mean, your sales tell you, and vendors tell you that's what you need because your competitor needed this, and you just bought into that idea, and then you deploy that system. You never go back and ask your operations, look, what is the single most important thing you need to have that makes your life 100x easier in doing evaluations, let's say, or doing sales and marketing and whatever, right? So you never ask that. So someone else tells you, look, and that is good. I mean, it's not bad. I mean, consultants, you hire consultants for that. But at the end of the day, I think people who are in the trenches know a lot more than someone else telling them how to run their business.
No, I think
it's always structural. So it's always structural. It's not technology.
Yeah, and I think, so if we kind of stem out of that, like there's a lot of optimism, but then in a lot of cases there's also a lot of confusion, right? So for example, that there are conversations that are happening today about things like agents running companies, right? So why, if we could go a little bit deeper into this particular part of the conversation, why does that promise break down? Like I want to pick your brain on that a little bit more.
No, I mean, it's not like, I mean, what does it mean, agent companies run by agents? So we use lots of agents. I use lots of agents. So for example, I have a CMS and I have an agent on top of it. Then I use different agents for project management that we built on top of our tools. So I use a lot of agents. So for example, think about that every day I'm leading a product, and every day I just extract a report from the agent that traditionally I had to assemble from just looking at the dashboard and lots of inference based on that board. And that made me harder to do it every day. So I used to do it, let's say, once in 2 weeks, but now I do it daily. So, but the way the adaptation comes in when it's so easy to extract that report through that assistant, which works with the voice, which works with natural language. I use lots of voice AI. And then, so agents are helping me a lot there. Also in sales, my sales agents, they are helping me a lot. But the challenge, what I find is, I mean, when you ask, so the way I use agents is like, so once the agents are there, once you have developed the agents, always work with the ChatGPT or Claude, whatever LLM you're using for general purpose. So I ask them that, give me a prompt for this agent, and I try to give it a context. I give that context, and then it extracts me the report. So I create a prompt from a different language model, and then I use it on an agent. Now, the better job I do in giving the context and preparing a prompt, the better the results are. Sometimes it gives me the report, say, holy shit, I haven't thought about it. And sometimes it's like, how to make him think, how I don't need this. I mean, this is bullshit crap. And when you really look into it, it's all about context. So, and if you just extrapolate on top of it, it also means agents would work the way they are intended to. It's the effort we need to put into give the organizational context in sales and marketing. In my mind, for example, it's not one thing that goes on in my mind. So for example, if I'm doing engineering, and now I'm doing, for example, I'm talking to someone about sales. So that engineering context is in my head, right? Generally, that context in deterministic software systems, that context, you didn't have the access to that sort of context. All you had to do was you had to ask to your engineer. what's going on, and you could. So really, it's all currently I have this view, like the better context you have, the
Mm,
better your agents will perform,
mm,
and we should do some deliberate effort
mm,
to give context to the agents. I've seen some of the people; they are very good linguistic. They have very good command on linguistics. They're not engineer, and somehow when they talk to ChatGPT, they
mm,
get they somehow get results or prompts in such fashion that and when they use those prompts into agents I mean, human can't extract that kind of report that agents does, but really you need to command uh, how to ask the right question, how to tell the agent, how to give the context of the situation.
mm, mm. And so I think two things that come to mind here. Like one, you already spoke about, which is obviously context, right? Because with talking to any agent or LLM, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? So as good as your prompt will be, as good as the context will be, that's as good as your answer will be, right? But I think it also naturally like brings me to data, right? Everyone says, and this is established, that data is the fuel for AI, and this is something that you and I also have
And
talked about previously,
and we've
right?
been we've grown
Yeah,
uplisting this phase. Data is the new oil,
yeah.
and yeah, yeah.
There you go, right? So
Mm.
so that kind of brings me to asking, why isn't synthetic data or for example automated data, why isn't that enough for complex reasoning in the enterprise?
So I mean, I'll come back to that. I mean, because that's it. So in data, there are two parts. One is the data you already have in your organization.
Mm,
Does that make sense? First of all,
mm,
I mean, how much data do you have around sales and marketing and engineering, whatever you do?
mm,
Where is that data? And does that make sense? The real effort goes into how to make that data AI ready, right?
mm,
The real data for very large organizations, data exists in house, right?
mm,
So we need to make sense of that data. That's number one. Now, in terms of data creation, let's suppose if in terms of if think about again, you want to develop a voice AI for one of your platform, right?
mm,
First, you need to think why you need to do that. Are there any existing uh, agnostic platforms that you can deploy? You should always go for that. But if you don't, then you always okay, thought about like, oh, you want to build your own voice AI stack. Okay, then the thing is like just even covering accents in voice AI is a very tall order to live up to.
yeah, yeah,
So Southern American accents, Northern British accents, Hindi,
yeah,
Urdu, Telugu. I mean, there's so many, just in so many accents there. Now you
yeah,
need to, if you want to make sure that that your voice AI is good in particular accent or particular language, you need to create a lot more data, right? That
yeah,
probably you don't have in GPT on the internet or even in house. So that's also important. That's very basic, but
mm,
also take another use case. If you are doing, let's say, if you are researching on quantum physics,
mm,
right,
mm,
and you want someone who can create a lot of data around quantum physics or astrology, and what it requires is like, let's say, hiring an astrophysicist or quantum biologist from Oxford. Um, uh, that's a second kind of data, right, that you
yeah,
need to train the model. So yes, data is a bottleneck, but I think enterprise. I mean, I was talking to this very large organization, and they were thinking about data creation
mm,
synthetically. And
mm,
in three questions, I figured out like, I mean, we don't need any synthetic data creation. All we need is just to make sense of the existing data. The organization has been for more than 100 years. They have so much data. There was so much data even in Excel. We just needed to make sure how to make sense of that data and push it through to the language models and make sense of it. So,
mm,
and by the way, is very tightly associated with the context. Data is
mm.
context.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And that makes me then come back to the thing that we mentioned in the start, where you brought up the MIT report, and so like why really, like why do long-term AI strategies seem to like not live up to their potential, like they fail so quickly?
Long-term strategies, just remove the word AI into it. I mean, I was discussing with Adil, and we were
Mm,
planning, of course, 2026, and we were planning what to do. And I mean, when I started building Code Ninja, I had this huge, I read book of John Doerr, OKRs. Google was a thing
mhm.
back then.
Yeah.
It's still an empire, but I mean, we used to follow a lot. I mean, there were books how Google works, and OKRs is a very important thing. And we used to, so I had this obsession with OKRs. So I used to make lots of OKRs for the next year and all that. So one thing very important, Adil just said to me a couple of days ago. So like, think about how can you plan something for a quarter
Mm,
materially, right? Because
Yeah.
that's the maximum window that you have to do something. Things are moving so fast. And that's what I also heard from Aravind, Perplexity, that it's
Mm.
very hard to think beyond first quarter or one
Yeah.
quarter, right? You can't think beyond. I mean, you have that macro level overview. For example, if you talk about Perplexity, what
Mm.
Aravind had this macro view that he wants to answer everything. I mean, he wants to maximize truth. It's having an answer of whatever the question you ask is a very tall order to live up to. That's a macro level thing, but that's not you are going to do. You are going to plan your quarter on. That's a vision, right?
Mm.
But
Mm.
on the quarter front, when you talk about AI is not a vision for your company that you say,
Mm.
okay, you have this long-term vision of making digital doctors, right? If you
Yeah.
are a hospital, let's say. Yeah,
Mm.
that's not a vision. That's not you. That's not AI. Should not be associated with a vision. AI is a tool that you want to increase performance or solve certain important problems. So think about healthcare. If you think about healthcare, I think the in US the per capita cost, the per capita spend on healthcare is somewhere around $14,000, and
Mm.
40% of that cost is admin cost. Right
Mm.
now, which means there's a lot of admin cost that can be replaced with AI. Okay,
Yeah.
when you are planning your quarter, you can say, okay, what kind of tasks you can replace that are very admin related, right?
Mm.
And that are admin in nature, and then you can replace with AI in first quarter. That
Mm.
is a way to plan with AI. Rather than I've seen a lot of people, they say that, I mean, AI is going to transform biology, and what I see is like their admin work is still very manual. So that's the way to look at it.
Mm. Mm. And I think, the goal there then becomes like making it less about, like you said, like I've also been in conversations where AI is, part of people's vision, right? And I think that the focus
It
needs to
shouldn't
shift
be.
towards exactly,
AI
right?
shouldn't be the AI shouldn't be the part of vision.
Yeah, and so the focus needs to shift towards the having the capacity to adapt, because you mentioned quarters, and you mentioned essentially you're looking at a horizon, right? You're looking at a window, and so you should worry more about having like fast learning loops, right? And the capacity to adapt again. So I think what you're saying is exactly on point. And if this is true, which again, in my opinion, it is, what does enterprise software actually look like in for example 2026, like in this new world? Like, what does it look like?
When I started my career,
Hmm.
so I was an engineer, that I was part of pre-sales and all that. One thing I
Hmm.
learned was that, uh, I mean, when we used to talk to the customers, they used to say, like, I mean, it's harder to use. I mean, our workflow is different.
Hmm.
Then even I work with some of the consulting businesses like SAP and Oracle and all those, and their consultants like uh, uh, as that supreme leaders, they used to come, look, that's how you run the business. And the guy who's been running the business from the last 25 years and telling them, like, that's the way to run the business, right? And really what it was like, look, we have built this because we could scale it for
Hmm.
businesses like yours. We have
Hmm.
built this, you have to adapt to it, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Even I mean, and I found it very hard. Then we saw businesses, implementation consultants and whatnot.
Hmm.
They those kind of businesses who whole job was just to customize the
Hmm.
core software as per customer needs. That's what, for example, think about SAP consulting businesses or Oracle consulting. That's what they do,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, uh, I think enterprise software shouldn't look like that, right?
Hmm.
Anymore.
Hmm.
Enterprise software should look like how you run your business,
Hmm.
right? That's your advantage.
Hmm.
If you are deploying the same CRM that everyone else has deployed, one thing
Hmm.
you have for sure is, like, think about sales CRM. There are contacts, there are deal boards, there
Hmm.
are these follow-ups, there are these agents, there are ABM agent. That's someone has designed it for you, and then of course have given you this idea of like some low-code platform built in within the CRM, so you can customize some of your own workflows. But
Hmm.
eventually, someone is telling you how to do sales, right?
Hmm.
And then you start focusing on other things because someone has done it for you. I think that is wrong. I
Hmm.
think that David Dutch recently seen one of his interviews said, like, humans are unimaginably different. And so
Hmm.
if humans are, so our businesses are. And
Hmm.
that's where the ideas come in, right?
Hmm.
The more you automate your systems, the lesser ideas you would have. Ideas come. I mean, the best of the ideas that I've seen that I had come in, it was never for one particular thing. The reason I had so many ideas and I implemented some of them in Code Ninja was like I was doing marketing, sales, engineering, coding, all that. And then I was just able to cross match. So as your systems should be one consolidated system that should be based on AI. That should be the, think of it like pool on top of which you need to build use cases. So think about like you have this AI pool which is very non-deterministic, right? But that's one. Think of it like one chat GPT for your organization. I'm just giving you a reference. I mean, you should have your own, let's say, model if you want. So for that one model, that should be your model should be your active system of record, and on top of which you need to develop workflows and systems. Why? Because the learning is then across the departments. So and the systems should be hyper personalized. Don't let any sales guy tell you how to do your sales and marketing and evaluations and all that stuff and procurement and whatnot, right? What really, I think going forward, any business need is coming up with truly original ideas. And that would only come when you have an active loop, active loop going on in the organization that touches every department. And the idea would generate from that loop.
And when you do talk about, generating ideas and having this learning loop, right? I think it's also important to touch on, in the remote first world that we are in, right now, this almost sounds counterintuitive in a sense, but like with all of this technology, keeping, what you just said in mind, why does physical presence then still matter? And if it does, then how does that fit into this entire picture of software and learning loops and ideation and all of those things?
Adoption is hard. Physical presence, yes. I mean, think about it. If I have to do something, let's say if I have to ask something about, let's say, our platform hyper. Currently, what I do is I can walk in straight into the hall and talk to Walid, let's say, and ask why you've done what you've done, right? Because the idea that came into my mind was very instantaneous. I haven't thought about that idea. I don't have any control in my mind when to generate. I mean, I can't stop ideas coming into my mind. So whenever it comes, I just want to shoot it immediately if I'm not, for example, if I'm around. Now, the other way is like, okay, you just write that idea and you can discuss it the other day, right? So if you give me a system that, for example, can just, let's say, whatever ideas that I have, whatever things that I want to interact with, why do you connect with people? Because it's a sense of connection, but also a sense of where you want to brainstorm out things, want to get things done. So if you give me the idea that have a persistent memory that execute those ideas on my behalf, I did this podcast with Rafia where this thing is called System 3, a meta layer outside AI systems that would just do things on your behalf. So I'm doing this work on my home, did all that stuff, and put it into that model, and I'm moved on. But that models would do is like it would be just communicating with those people, talking to them or their agents, for example, right? And that conversation would happen, and then value would drive. Currently, the models are not there. The tool used for model is hard. I mean, I see models; they're finding it very hard to do even shift from one tool to another. There's a company called, there's a Korean model called HyperClover. They've done a very good job in tool use, but that's still in the evolution. Once we are there, where agents then, for example, can do a lot of work on your behalf, then yes, you can tell to your boss, look, I'm off, but my agent is coming in the office. He's in the office or she's in the office. Yeah, I mean, they would work, but I'm off. So yes, that would happen in next 3-5 years, but currently we're not there. So yeah, and it feels alive. Connection feels alive. I mean, I'm a big fan of on-prem work. I hate remote. Most of my teams are on-prem, even though probably in some of the use cases, some of the areas where they can work remotely, but I don't allow them. So yeah, I think models are not there. But once there, from performance standpoint, there won't be an issue. Maybe in the next 3 to 5 years. So yeah, but currently, yes, the models are not there. And when I say models, probably in this benchmarks, they are there. But in terms of tool use, in terms of truly context switching, they're not there as where human minds are.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I also think that proximity now has become less about control, which it used to be, obviously, and more about this context, being able to carry that context, and being able to have a tight feedback loop and all of those things. But so Umar, if you had to like summarize all of this, what would you say is because we can keep talking on this for like hours and hours. But what would you say is like the core mismatch that's sort of causing AI to underperform in enterprise? Like, what's that core thing?
Yeah, in enterprise or any other business, like
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
want to be very enterprise focused. I mean,
Fair, fair
I
enough.
mean, uh, I would ask myself, like, what are the things that I've achieved with AI
Hmm,
in the organization and what I couldn't,
hmm,
right? So, in what I think is modern AI is there. I think
yeah.
even if there is no further evolution in AI,
Hmm,
you can transform your workplaces and factory floors, but what you've already got. That's what
hmm,
stuff, right? So that's already there. The thing what to me, what I find is people, I don't have to say that, but yeah, that's true. People
hmm,
who were younger,
hmm,
23, 24, 25, just out of college, they
hmm.
are finding it's far more easier to roll out AI systems with them in the organization than the people who have somehow wired into pre-existing ways
Yeah.
of pre-existing time, like when there wasn't any AI around. So as in software, we are a software business. So building software, I mean, they would come up with lots of arguments why it's not a good idea to build software using, let's say, Hyper, Cursor. They would say I mean, no. But the truth is, people are. I think it's so hard to
Hmm,
to unlearn your neural weights. So if you
hmm,
are in your 30s, it's so hard to unlearn your neural weights. I talk to a lot of CTOs,
hmm,
and they are finding it so hard just with the adoption of Cursor.
hmm,
Right?
hmm, hmm.
I don't know why, but
Hmm.
one thing I'm sure it's a people problem. It's not a technology
Yeah,
problem,
yeah.
right? So what I've done is I brought in people in some of the key areas where people are more receptive to new ideas, just
Hmm,
want to know how to get things done, uh, rather than those who are just wired up. If someone tells me, look, I can tell you that I have some of the engineers, a good friend of
hmm,
mine,
hmm,
in my company in Code Ninja. They say, look, like they have this internal competition going on with AI, saying
hmm,
like I'll prove you. As if AI is some human, it's proven like
hmm,
they cannot perform better than me. That's not
hmm.
an area or a battle you want to pick, right?
Yeah.
You don't want that battle. It's a tool.
Hmm,
So I think it's always the people problem.
hmm,
And also, if you are a leader, your own adaptation,
hmm.
how your own adaptation is. So how many AI tools we use, right?
Yeah.
Just think about these are meta glasses. Just think about
Hmm,
these are meta glasses,
hmm,
and
hmm,
now it's what I mean. It has improved. They don't expect this one bulk improvement in your overall things. They're very small improvement that you can do with AI that would just fundamentally transform the way you work. So it has a native integration with Meta AI, though Meta AI sucks, but still. And so I'm driving a car, I'm running, I'm
yeah.
doing whatever, right?
Yeah.
So all my ideas, whenever I get an idea, think about, I'm listening to a podcast, right? I've got an idea, right? I
Hmm,
even say, hey Meta, can you set up this uh, idea into this thing? And I can immediately register my idea into Meta,
hmm.
and then I can pull it off the next day. And in that pulling off, you can integrate that Meta AI into your Notion where that idea is available, right? And even directly with the Meta AI, that idea is available. This
Yeah.
has improved my productivity a lot. Second, for
Yeah.
example, Whisper Flow. I use
Yeah.
Whisper Flow. I can't think of writing email with these meat sticks. I can't think. I can't go back because when I write email using Whisper Flow, it's just better, right?
Hmm,
It's just better because the articulation is better.
yeah.
And one thing people say, like, you can use ChatGPT, they have the voice
Yeah.
thing, and you can just copy the text to the email. But really, this
Hmm,
copying, you can do that.
yeah.
But then when I go straight to the mailbox and write using Whisper Flow, somehow my articulation is very concise and better. I don't
Hmm,
know why, but again, yes. So you have to upgrade your toolkit as a
yeah.
person also
Yeah.
for all
Yeah.
the using all the retail product. Once that's there, then also think about if that's there, then you have the ability to generate ideas within
Hmm,
the enterprise too. And then of
hmm,
course hiring the right people, bringing the right people, relatively younger people, less
hmm.
than age 30. And it's not like there are a lot of people about 30, but I'm saying it's like we have a lot to learn. So let them learn on a new stack, and they
Yeah.
can adapt and roll out. Great if they don't know they don't know how the work was done before AI. That's
Hmm,
great because
hmm.
that's their starting point.